Hi everyone, thank you for choosing to watch this webinar. My name's Carly and I'm part of Unzipped, and today we'll be going through pricing strategy, so how to create the best pricing strategy for your fashion brand. So it will be about 60 minutes. Um, Maybe a bit shorter, who knows? I'll try be quick. After, there'll be some really key takeaways. You'll get the workbook to actually do the pricing strategy yourself, and there'll be a special offer. So stick with it, get to the very end. Promise it will be worth it. Here is the presentation. So today's topic: how to launch your fashion brand with the right pricing strategy. Firstly, what will you get from this session? So you'll get to take away to keep an actual detailed workbook. So the workbook that we'll be going through today, that I'll show you exactly how to fill it in, that actually will form your pricing strategy. I'm actually giving you it. So thank you for joining this session. And the biggest thank you from me is going to also come in the form of a workbook. So you can create your own brand's pricing strategy straight after this webinar. The second, probably pretty obvious, but from today's session, I hope to give you an understanding of the key components that constitute a successful pricing strategy. So there are 5 modules, 5 steps, and from this, you really should know how to do your pricing strategy and really understand what each step means and then how to put it all together. And then, drum roll, the final best takeaway from this session is a special offer. So this special offer is for you and for you for joining this webinar. It's really an amazing offer, and the suspense, you'll have to wait till the very end to receive and to know what this special offer is. Who am I? You may have all been asking yourself. So, hello again from me. My name's Carly, and I'm the managing director of Unzipped, and I am also an online growth specialist. You may be asking yourself, what is an online growth specialist? So, I'll tell you. I have been working in fashion for over a decade, but specifically online. And I've been working with multiple brands and multiple fashion online platforms. So, by working and gaining my experience of working with brands, I've become expert really in how to grow brands online. So, we will work with small, medium, large brands. We will introduce them to e-commerce platforms, the likes of, say, ASOS, and we will launch them. And then after launching, we'll work on how to grow that brand. So is it range extension? Is it looking at sweeter price points? Is it looking at country-specific factors? So these are all things I have learned through my career, and these are all things that I want to now share with you guys. So today, one key lesson is pricing strategy, and that has come from my experience and knowledge. What are we going to go through today? So in about 45 minutes, we will cover 5 modules. So the first one, defining how you want to be perceived in your new target market. This is such a super critical first step. Without undertaking this first step, really you shouldn't move on to step 2 to 5. You really first need to ask yourself the key questions that we will cover. These key questions will really define who your brand is and how you want to be perceived. Without knowing, you really can't know how you want to grow and how you want to grow in what market. The second step is how to conduct a pricing comparison of your competitors. Competitors are so important. If you don't already know that, that is definitely a key takeaway from today. As a brand, you should always be watching your competitors. What are they doing in your market? What are they doing in the world? You should always be benchmarking your brand versus them, and how can you be better than them? So today we're going to look at your competitors from a pricing basis. Step 3. We are going to look at third-party e-commerce platforms. So I mentioned one earlier. Let's look at ASOS. So ASOS is going to be our example today, and we are going to look at, again, your competitors and how they price on these third-party platforms, and we're going to pull some analysis from this. We will look at one of your competitors. We will look at ASOS, and we will look, are they up pricing or are they down pricing? What are the key price points that your competitors are using in that market on that platform? This will give you some really key answers, and these answers will then form part of your strategy. Then we will review the average exchange rate. So that might seem a little bit of a financial task. Maybe you might think, why do I have to do that? That's not my expertise. I will show you a really key, easy way to do this. Anyone can do it, and it's really, again, important that you as a fashion brand, you are able to do this and that you run this analysis pretty much once every season. The final step, step 5, we are going to pull together everything we've learned in step 1 to 4, and we are going to create one global price matrix. And this will be your matrix that you keep as a brand. You can share it with third-party platforms. You could share it with your marketing team. You could share it with your assistant. This will be a one workbook that everyone can reference. So everyone at any point will know that your 100 Aussie dollar is equivalent to £60, which is equivalent to €70. Let's start with a few little facts. Consumers today expect sustainable, on-trend, quality products at a competitive price. You might be thinking, wow, that's like everything. It pretty much is. So sustainability, huge. You really need to consider this in your range. It needs to be on trend. It needs to be desired. If not, it's not going to sell. And it needs to be good quality, i.e. it doesn't fall apart. It doesn't have to be top luxurious. It just doesn't need to fall apart. And you need to deliver all of that at a competitive price. So competitive price is exactly what we're doing today. So don't freak out and think, oh my gosh, it needs to be super cheap. That's not what I'm meaning. It needs to be competitive, the right price in that market. Second fun fact for today. This is one that you as a fashion brand, you may have heard of. If not, you are going to hear this the rest of your career. As a fashion brand, you need to deliver the right product in the right market at the right price. Super important. There is no point in doing 2, not 3 of those points. You need to do all 3. And if you do, this will give the product the best chance at making the most money for you. Let's start with the first step, strategy. Defining how you want to be perceived in your new target market. Firstly, ask yourself, what is the right target market for your brand? You may already know that it's the UK. You may not. Is it the US? Is it Europe? You need to know what market you want to go into before you start this strategy. So if you don't know, you can ask yourself these few questions. Firstly, what is your shipping capability? That's crucial. So if you want to launch in the UK and you're an Australian brand, can you get your product there? Do you have the right contacts? Do you know how much it costs? These are scenarios that you need to be able to work through and resolve. Secondly, are you wanting to test your product in a new market? This is a really interesting question to ask yourself as a brand. This is crucial to expanding, to knowing who are your consumers out there, where are you successful. So really as a brand, ask yourself which markets you're wanting to test your product in. And that really should be the fundamental kind of focus of your brand when you're wanting to expand. The next 2 questions are a little bit more market e-commerce specific. So which e-com markets have the biggest growth in your product category? In which countries are up and coming in the e-commerce market? Those two questions, you can really inform yourself by reading and by being aware. So you might not, again, have the answers to those questions, but to keep informed and to keep, again, aware of what's happening in e-commerce and what's happening in your product category, I encourage you to start reading. Start reading from relevant, applicable articles, websites, magazines, whatever it might be. So there are a few on that page that I can recommend. Another one which is really, really great is BOFF, Business of Fashion. But again, I encourage you to just keep yourself informed, and that's how you will start to keep evolving your pricing strategy. So next, ask yourself, how do you want to be perceived in your new target market? So now you know who your market is. The next is to answer, how do you want to be perceived? How do you want your brand to be perceived? These are some next questions to ask yourself. The market that you have chosen, does it perceive value in price, or does it perceive value in quality? So that question is really important. Is it a market that is all about price point? It's very much a promo, a markdown driven market. Or is the market, by again doing some research, is that market actually valuing the quality of the fabrication? Is it valuing the quality of everything that goes onto that garment, i.e. the trims, the bells, the whistles? That will then help to understand the perception of that market. Match this back to your brand. So the market, does that match the same perception as your brand? If it doesn't, that will suggest that there is no point in going to that market. Next, this is quite a random question, but it really is, again, a fundamental question when you're forming your pricing strategy. How do you want to be perceived as a price point? Do you want to be a 00 ending price, or do you want to be a 095 price? So some people perceive a round number as more expensive, or the 0.95, that can seem slightly cheaper. It's not quite £27, it's £26.95. So it's that little bit cheaper. So to some, it can look a little bit more inviting on that basis. Next, the market that you have chosen now, which third-party platforms do you want to approach? So I would encourage, through everything I've learned in my career, that you go into a new market not independently, but you actually use third-party platforms to help you test a new market. If you're going into the UK, would you go onto ASOS? Does that match your brand's perception? It's young, it's fashionable, it's a good price point product. Then ask yourself, who are your competitors in this target market? This is really, really important. So you will know who competitors are in your current market, but in this new market, again, let's say the UK, who are your competitors there? So in the next module, I will go through actually how to find the competitors in this new market. Once you have answered all of those questions, so the questions on both slides, that will conclude and answer who your target market is and how you want to be perceived. And you will have confirmed that the two match. Here is an example. So Spell is a pretty well-known Aussie fashion label. And this example will, make sense of the questions that I have just shared with you. So let's go through it. Spell, let's say they want to launch into the US. Their competitors in that market are similar brands. So similar brands like Free People, Anthropology, they're pretty huge. They're pretty global. They are selling in Australia, but they are selling around the world. Then you can take it down to some smaller, so like Blue Planet. That's very much more US specific. So therefore, that is a relevant competitor in the US market that they need to be aware of, that it is very boho match back to Spell. So that's an example of their competitors in the new market. Suitable third-party platforms. So Spell would be looking for the perception of quality. So therefore, we wouldn't add on things like Century 21, which is more of a discount department store in the US. We'd be looking at Revolve, who is definitely more of a mid-tier platform. Lulu's is very much for dresses, very much for like the middle-aged, young to middle-aged lady. For rounding, we have chosen for Spell that we would stick with 0-0 rounding. This actually is what they're doing in Australia, and it matches the perception of quality again. So we'd stick with that for the US market. Then just looking at the choice of the US. So the US works for Spell because the US is historically known as a quality market for women's fashion. So there's been many long-standing department stores like Bloomingdale's, like Saks, and they have established the market to be a quality market. So less price point driven. So right now it matches back to Spell. Great, so that hopefully makes sense of the 2 slides of questions and everything we've talked about. Step 2. So now we're going to look at pricing comparison of your competitors. Firstly, who are your competitors? So in the next section, I'm going to give you some clear guidance of actually who are your competitors and the kind of critical criteria that you need to, again, ask yourself to find the relevant competitors. You will know the first step. You will know who your current competitors are. So keep them. They are still completely relevant. So your top 2 to 3 competitors right now, they are relevant in this analysis. The second point. So now you know your new market. So let's stick with the UK. You need to find competitors in your product category that are selling in Australia and also selling in the UK. So this workshop, this example, we're looking at swimwear. We're looking at the UK, so therefore a competitor would be Wolf and Whistle. So Wolf and Whistle is selling in Australia, but it's also selling in the UK. So they would be a new competitor that you would keep in mind. The next point, this one is an exciting one to look for. So who are your aspirational brands? So in your product category, who do you just absolutely love? So they may be completely different, i.e. like, really higher price point or like really funky design, but who are your aspirational brands in that market? So again, they must be selling in this new market. So really these will be big global players, and select them. So select probably 2 to 3 again, and they will add into your competitors. The final point goes without saying. If you are a swimwear brand, don't find a competitor that sells footwear. So obviously, fundamentally, we need to be comparing like for like. Moving into what this looks like. So now you know who your competitors are, we now need to get into actually the pricing strategy. So this is just a brief view of the pricing comparison table. So this is in the workbook that you guys will get to keep. So this is one of your takeaways from today's webinar, how to complete it. So here are some simple instructions for you to follow, for you to be able to complete and to start doing your competitor price comparison. So in the left column, you enter your product category. So we're sticking with swimwear. So you would enter your product categories. So you enter the categories that you are currently selling. However, one tip that I can give you if you're already considering adding in, say, a new swimwear top, so it's strapless, or you're considering adding in a one piece, or you're considering adding in beachwear because that's relevant to this kind of category, add them in. Add them and start to look at what your competitors are doing. So this will already add to your analysis, and this will then suggest that when you're ready to add new product categories, you already know what the competitive price is. That's a key tip. So you don't have to, but I recommend you do. Then across the top, each competitor has their own square. So enter their names across the top and follow the currency one by one, and you would navigate to the competitor's website. You would enter the Aussie dollar for that specific category. Then you would enter the pound or whatever currency you are looking at for your new market, and just logically work through finding each product category, entering the price point, and complete the whole table, complete all of your competitors. I'm going to give you now a live example of exactly what this looks like. This is the fold. So the fold is one of the competitors for swimwear. So I am going to just go through exactly what I was talking about. So right now in the background, I have all of my competitor brands open in a web browser. I'm going to navigate to the store. And I'm going to start with tops. Let's just start with the obvious. So looking at tops only, I am going to remind myself of the categories. So this is the workbook. This is the workbook that you guys get to take away. Let's start with the first one. So there is underwire cup, crop triangle, crop top, triangle, etc. So underwire cup. Let's find it. So underwire. If there isn't the opportunity to filter, that's all good. You just use your eye. You are a fashion brand. You should be able to follow what's what. So here we look at the price point, 180, 180. Next underwire is here. So they're 160. And pretty much you just work through all of the options available and you try and find the difference, the entry and the exit price point for that product category. So scrolling, let's just assume that that was it. So it was one underwire. So it was actually 160 and it was exit 180. So that is me entering the fold, my Aussie price point for the underwire cup. Then to show you, some of your competitors will have the option for you to toggle on and off of the price point. If they do, this is fantastic. It makes your job super easy. So you then run the exact same process for the GBP, for the pound. So again, underwire, we can see 94, down to here, it's 83. So let's just follow that. So 83, and then this was 94. Hopefully this now makes sense. I won't move on to the euro because we're just sticking with the UK today. So I would do this for every product category that my competitor, the fold, has to offer. And then I would move on, so working sideways, looking at all of the remainder competitors that I have to compare. Back to the presentation. The very final step of this pricing comparison of your competitors is to summarize. So there is no point in doing all of this if we don't summarize the data. So in the workbook, that live example, you may have noticed in the very first section, the first kind of square, there was a summary table. So this summary table is already calculated for you in the fantastic workbook that you will get to take away. And it will automatically sum the average price points of your competitors here. So it will do it for the entry and for the exit, and it was just going to look at Aussie dollar for now. What we will then look at is the plus and the negative. So the plus and the negative, the difference between the price point of your competitors versus your price point. So this is really what this exercise is all about. So you will be able to see, so let's stick with this underwire example that we completed, that your competitors are pricing the underwire at $77. You are pricing it at 79 in this example. So that's a very, very close comparison. So this would then suggest that you are competitively priced in that category. However, if we look at the crop top, there is a 44% difference. So your competitors have the crop top extremely well priced, i.e. very cheap. So your current price point at 89, this would be a challenge to you. Can you moderate the design in any way to lower the price point? Does that fit the perception of your brand? Can you do that? So it will pose some really exciting, challenging questions into whether or not you can up or down price the product category to match your competitors. Back to one key point I mentioned, which is just here. So this data will suggest new price points. So new price points for product categories you're not even selling yet. So you can clearly see here, so this is my this is me, my brand. So here I don't have a price point, I don't offer the triangle, but here it's telling me from my competitor analysis that if I were to offer a triangle bikini, I should offer it at 66 up to 70. So fantastic. When I'm ready to offer a triangle bikini, I know my competitive price points. So we have completed step 2, all about our competitor comparison. So now we need to look at these competitors and we need to look globally. So we need to look in this new market, the UK, that we've chosen for this example. And we need to look at the third-party platforms that I would want to sell on and see what my competitors are doing. This is a screenshot again of the workbook that you guys will get to keep and get to take away at the very end of this webinar. So the key question in this exercise that we're going to ask is, are our competitors up or down pricing on a third-party platform in the new market? You can see this here. So this is again the UK. We've chosen ASOS. We're sticking with all the same examples. And we are then looking at our competitors. So we've got Wolf and Whistle and Freya. And we would look at the same item and we would see how it's priced. So that is then telling us the up or down pricing on this third-party platform and therefore in this market. How to actually fill in this table, how to complete this section. Firstly, select. So we are sticking with using ASOS just to make sure this is clear and obvious in this webinar. However, you would refer back to step 1. Who did you choose in your new market as a third-party platform that you would want to sell on? So refer back to that, and then you would use that platform. A tip, something that I could encourage, is use a large platform. There's no point in launching your product in a new market on a small, not really well-known platform. It's not going to give you the best analysis. It's not going to give you probably the best success rate. So go for a large one. Reviewing more than one platform, 100% do that. So again, that you have an overall view of the market. There's no point in just looking at one because it could be completely biased and could be really swung to super cheap, for example. And then you don't have to analyze all of your competitors. That will take a while. So just do 2 to 3. And this would be 2 to 3 of your competitors that are actually selling on this platform. Again, in this example is ASOS. And then one final kind of tip when you're completing this is if the competitor doesn't have the ability to switch to the UK currency, so they are just showing the Aussie dollar, for example, then you would go onto Google and find the exchange rate for today, and you would enter the price point based on today's exchange rate. And just take note of this, because it's really interesting when you redo this analysis in, say, 6 months' time, that actually what was the exchange rate that you used to run this exercise. So that is how to complete this analysis of your third-party platforms. Again, the most important and final step is to look at the analysis, to look at the summary of the up and down pricing of this step. Here is a very tiny little summary, but this is literally it. This is what you want to gain from this exercise. So from this data that we gained, we can see that our competitors are actually, ASOS is actually down pricing by 13% versus our competitor's website. So that is suggesting to you as a brand that if you were to use ASOS to test a new market, that actually your price points need to be lower. They need to be cheaper, because ASOS is taking the price and it's lowering it. So to appeal to that new market, it's telling you that it's actually a market that's very much about price. Also, from the data you've gained, it can summarize the sweet price point, so the average best price point for categories. So this again is super important when you're pulling together this price strategy for your brand. So if you were to again go to ASOS in the UK, which is the new market, you would ideally want your tops, your bikini tops, to be at £33, and you would want your bottoms, bikini bottoms, to be at £20. So this is really clear analysis that you are gaining for your brand. Step 4. So this is all about exchange rates. So as mentioned in my intro, don't be off put by this. This isn't a finance task. This is something that you should be able to do and feel comfortable as a brand owner to look at exchange rates and to ensure that you are pricing based on the average of pretty much, the exchange rate of the world of that currency. I will show you 2 simple tools that you will be able to use to find the exchange rate for your market. So what are those 2 simple tools? The first is a website. So it's called xe.com. So xe.com you can access anywhere. It's free. It's really easy to use. So we're sticking with the example of this webinar. So we're going to look at the Aussie dollar versus the GBP. And this is the financial view. So this website is actually pulling together all of the data, and it gives you the options to look at it in different metrics. So you could look at it in a yearly view. You could look at it in a month, in a week, in a day. So I would never really consider looking at it in such a short view. I would always look at it from a yearly view. And here it's actually giving you the close, the average for the year view. And it will tell you also what was the lowest exchange rate and what was the highest exchange rate. So this is giving you a really clear answer as to what the global financial world exchange rate is, and it will give you a good basis of what you should follow to be accurate and also again competitive when you're forming your price strategy. Tool 2 is actually looking at the data that you've already done. You've already completed this. And by looking and using the second tool, this is actually, again, relating it back to your competitors, to your specific market. So this is looking at the step 2. So when you looked at your competitors, you pulled in all of their price points by category and by currency. So the very first example was the fold. So when I showed you the live example, we looked at the underwire, we looked at the Aussie price point, and we looked at the GBP price point. So by doing that, that actually told me down here, you can see that the exchange rate that they use, that the fold use, the competitor, is 0.57. So that is what we need to do in tool 2, is actually refer back to step 2, look at the competitors that actually had that option, that toggle option on their website to move between price points. If that was available, then you need to calculate the exchange rate, which you can do in the workbook, and you just quickly take a note in this bottom box. Then, once you've done that in the actual price table, if you scroll to the bottom of that workbook, then in the table that's provided in the workbook that you get for free, you then enter your competitors. The fold, Miss Mandalay, Freya, you then enter the exchange rate that you have analyzed, that you have gained in the boxes here, and the workbook is already set to look at the average and the difference. Finally, the next bit is to use both tools. So we've looked at a financial overall view, and we've looked at actually your competitors, so something that is more, relevant to you specifically. Then we pull the two together. So very simple, just one extra step. So this table that I just talked about, you then would enter the financial view in here. So I've chosen to look at 1 year average. You could look at 2 years, but really you make that decision. I think looking at the last year is relevant enough. 2 years, a lot of things could have happened to change the exchange rate. 1 month, too small. So enter the year view here, and then you've already entered your competitors. So this is the summary. This is the kind of simple analysis of this step 4. Looking then at the actual final summary of this section, you have a decision to make. So the average is stated here. The average is looking at obviously all of the currencies. The difference is actually looking at your competitors versus the financial view, versus the xe.com view. So here it's very, very minimal. So 0.53 versus 0.52. So if there's ever an occasion where the data that you've gained is so fractionally different, I would encourage you to always kind of go with the higher option. So it really doesn't make a huge difference to your actual price points. However, if you have the option, I would just follow the slightly higher. So that's what I have chosen in my summary here. So the exchange rate that we will fix for the UK market, this new market that we've chosen to go into, is 0.53. Step 5, the fifth and final step, is actually creating your recommended retail price matrix. What does a matrix actually mean and look like? Here is an example. So this again is in your workbook that you get to take away for free at the end of this webinar. A matrix is simply a table full of price points. So here is the Aussie dollar, because we're sticking with an Australian-based business. And in the matrix, we have the GBP, we have the euro, so on and so forth. You could put the US in there, obviously, whatever your market, your new market is, you would have the relevant currency. So this is what a price matrix looks like. It may seem overwhelming. There are a lot of numbers there are a lot of columns. However, once you have completed this task, the fifth and final step, then all you would need to do is keep the Aussie price point showing. You would hide everything but keep the final GBP price point. So simply you would have two columns. You'd have your Aussie price point, your GBP price point. That is all that you would need to show. So therefore it would seem less overwhelming. Next is actually how to complete this. So I've given you the kind of simple instructions to follow. So just work from the top to the bottom to complete this task. First, what are your key price points? What are your current price points? You will know these, so you just need to enter them in the left column. Next, the exchange rate. So that's the fourth step that you completed. You will know what your exchange rate is for your new market. So enter it and apply it to the table. So 0.53 in the workbook, you just change the sum in the Excel to be 0.53. Next is rounding up and rounding down. So you will remember step one, we talked about perception. So perception, you will have decided, are you a .00 ending price, or are you a .95 ending price point? So you will then choose to round up and round down to your rounding rules as a brand. So I'm sticking in this example with 00 ending price points. So then that will complete rounding up, rounding down. Then you need to decide, so what is the final price point that you want to go with for your brand? So there are a few tips I can give you, but this is actually a decision that you need to make yourself. There's no specific rule to follow. So here really you've got the choice of 19 or 18 pounds. So you enter it in a way that you want to be perceived as again. So do you want a 39 price point to be 20 or 21? I would say that 20 sounds more of a quality brand, as opposed to 21 is a bit of an odd price point. So really just think of, do I prefer 20 or do I prefer 21 sounding price? What seems more logical? What makes more sense? What fits the perception of my brand? One final tip, one final sum that you can do to help you decide your final GBP price point is actually looking at the exchange rate. So this is again a sum that's in the workbook for you. So let's look again at this 39 price point that is one of your price points. You have chosen £20. So £20 is actually giving you a 0.51 exchange rate. That's 0.02 lower than the average. So you have already done this analysis in step 4. You know that the exchange rate is 0.53. That's what you've set. That's what you've decided. So now, are you really happy to have a price point that is lower than the average? So I would therefore say that maybe this price point actually should be 22. That will give you, it will either match or give you slightly higher than the average. Again, it's all about perception in the rounding rule of the price. However, fundamentally, it's all about making the right and the most amount of money you can for your brand. You need to ask yourself, can you afford to up price? So to answer this, you need to go back to everything we've just learned in step 1 to 4, but quite obviously step 2 and step 3 give you the answers to this. So step 2 is your competitor analysis, where you could see the difference in the price point. So the percentage difference, that's answering up pricing. Then when you compared in step 3, your third-party platforms, this also gave you a clear answer that were your competitors up or down pricing on ASOS. By looking at those, you will be able to answer, can you afford to up price? Looking at up pricing, actually, how do you do this? So this is now and the next step in actually creating this matrix. So a fact that I can share with you, and this is something that I have learned across over a decade of doing this, that most brands that I've worked with, they actually up price by 12% in the UK and EU market. And most brands up price by 20 to 25% in the US market. So that is just an average overall fact that I can share with you. So using that basis, I would then encourage you to apply that to your new market, whichever it is. We are looking at the UK. Let's apply 12%. Let's up our prices by 12%. So how we do that, you would navigate again to the free workbook that you will get at the end of this webinar. You enter your 12%, so you just change the sum in the background and you up price by 12%. Then you see what this does to your price points. You would then ask, does this align back to your market? So you would look to see if you are still competitive. So we would again look back to the previous analysis that you have run in step 1 to 4, and you will be able to check this. I will show you in a second by going back to this price comparison table. One other thing to note, that whatever you have chosen, so if you're choosing to up price by 12%, you don't need to change this in your current market. So your current Aussie price point can remain exactly the same. You would just change it for your GBP price point. And one final tip is I would encourage you as a brand to look at this, check that it's still relevant. So run step 1 to 5 every 6 months. So 6 months really just ensures that you are remaining competitive. You've checked all of the factors that build your matrix. Then you'd be confident that you are still getting the best profit for your brand. So let's look at a live example. So if you navigate back to your workbook, we'll be able to actually look, can you afford to upprice? So let's go back to the very first tab. The first tab is the summary. So in the summary, we can see for the underwire, again, what was the variance? What was the uppricing difference? So let's pick an example. The 39 price point and £25. So the 39 price point is down here. So this is the high waist. And we're looking to see, can it be £25? So already one clear factor that I'd be looking for is the 39 Aussie price point. Already your competitors are selling this at 55. So 41% higher than what you are currently selling it for. So this is clearly already telling you that the 12% that you're asking to increase it by, that you can easily afford to price it by 12 because your competitors are 41% higher than what you're already offering. So if we look specifically at your competitors, their GBP price point, we'd be able to see here that £25 is actually super competitive. Therefore, again, answering that you would be able to up price by that amount. So the competitors that offer the UK price point on their website, we've got 59, 28 and 24. So £25 is obviously roughly here in the middle, and actually super competitive for that category and for that market. So you have completed your step 1 to 5, and you now have the tools to be able to create your brand's pricing strategy. Woohoo! So what are the key takeaways? As I've already mentioned in the very, very beginning, which you may have forgotten, but you'll get this workbook to take away yourself and actually define your own pricing strategy. And you'll be emailed this at the very end of this session. Finally, it's time to know what the special offer is. 60%. So that's a huge 60% off the Unzipped online course of how to start your fashion label online. It is a 6-module course of which you can learn in your own time. So you're under no time pressure. You can take it away. There's lifetime access to the course. So the 6-module course will roughly consist of 8 hours of video training. There'll be 4 workbooks from the course. Again, you'll have lifetime access to it. There is a teacher and student Q&A, which you will have consistently. So it's 24/7. So straight after this webinar, you can send me your Q&As and I will get back to you. And then the final kind of extremely important special offer that comes on top of the special offer is 3 months of 1-hour free phone consultations. So after completing the course, you may have further questions, further needs, and I will actually give you an hour of my time every month for 3 months, and we will run through actually how you need to what point you're up to, how can I help you actually launch your fashion label online. So are you still stuck at the very beginning of who you are as a brand and defining your strategy? I'll be able to help coach you through that for the first 3 months. Next, what is the course? So I'll give you a quick overview of the 6 modules. So module 1, brand development phase. So in the brand development phase, we'll cover about the range, how to ensure you've got the right range, how to seek the best manufacturing options, which will talk about local, talk about global. We'll talk about channels. So are you going to use just your own website? Are you going to use third-party websites? Are you going to have a shoppable Instagram? And all of this will then build your launch strategy. So you really, really need to develop who you are as a brand before you launch, and you really need to be ready. Module 2, we'll look at an in-depth competitor analysis and we will create your brand strategy. So today we've done pricing. There are many, many more things we can pull from our competitors. So I'll show you how to do this. We'll do this in depth and then we will have a really clear strategy of your market, your new market, and how, again, you're going to launch your fashion label and in what markets. Module 3, brand setup phase. So in the setup phase, we'll go through the range. So again, range planning from a global perspective. There are many, many factors that come into this that I can teach you in this training. We'll look at operational compliance, which that covers the key topic of sustainability, actually being compliant, i.e. packaging, shipping, so many factors. And again, country specific compliance. We'll look at legal compliance, so contractual. I'll teach you how to understand and read contracts. Module 4, growth, super important. Once you've launched, how do you then grow? So I'm going to teach you overall how you're going to launch your fashion label, but then I'm going to teach you how you can launch it further. So how to make connections, how to grow your brand. So again, what options are there out there? How can you connect to third-party platforms? How can you grow and sell your brand globally? And then marketing. Marketing is huge. We could look at social media. We can look at actual Facebook ads. We can look at your website, how to market your brand. Module 5, business operations, part 1. Yep, part 1, and there's part 2. So first, The part one is looking at the buying calendar. So you need to understand the buying calendar from a global perspective and from different views. You are the brand, but you also need to understand how the designer, how the critical path, how the third party buyer looks at it. So I will give you my decade of experience, and I'll give you so many tips on how to not miss a trick, how to not miss a key date in the buying calendar. Then, from everything I've learned and from my consulting business, how to effectively project manage. I will teach you and give you some insider tips on how to ensure that your fashion brand launches on time, and so on and so forth. There are so many factors to ensure that you are successful throughout your career. Then the part two. The part two is so important. Sixth and final module is actually financial planning. So cash flow and the P&L. So P&L is profit and loss for those that don't know. I want to show you how much money you may need, or I can show you how to deal with how much money you may only have, and actually to what point you will spend until you actually make money. It's really important, and this again is something that you will need to present if you are looking for financial investment. Great. So they're all the modules. The next thing that I just want to remind you is that you go at your own pace. There is no time pressure on this course. The content is available straight away. So if you enroll today, I will give you access to the course and you have lifetime access. Brilliant. So thank you for participating. You've been amazing. Q&As, you email them to me. You navigate through the website, which has been present on the slide, and you can send me your Q&A. So after this webinar, you will be emailed a link for the course, How to Launch Your Fashion Label Online. Thank you so much, and tune in soon for the next webinar.